On this episode of the Connecting to Game podcast, we reflect on a critical watch of the Super Mario Bros. Movie from 2023.
Hi, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Andrei and Zanescu. I'm an assistant professor here at Concordia University. Joining me, as always, is
the coordinator of TAG, Marc Lajeunesse. And we are joined by two guests.
I'm Renee Leblanc. I don't know what my podcaster voice is yet, but I'm an avid video game enthusiast and independent researcher.
Hello, I'm Jules, Maier-Zucchino. I'm a PhD student at Concordia University in the Communication Studies program, working in the game studies field. And yeah, also an avid video game fan, which I imagine is consistent across the four of us.
Yeah. So if you're joining us, you've probably listened to some of the Connecting to Game podcasts. We usually talk about games, we talk about the games industry, developments with awards, and all such kind of things. Today, what we're doing is actually a follow-up discussion to a critical viewing of Super Mario Bros. 2023. So if you're into that, I would actually recommend you pause the podcast and go watch the movie and commit like another hour and a half to this whole affair.
It's good. It's worth it.
Yeah, everybody feeling
Agreed.
good?
Yeah, and then come back and we'll enhance the experience for you.
It's so fresh in my mind right now.
Yeah.
So Super Mario Bros. Has sort of become a lightning rod in the last year for this new wave of video game adaptations. It's been successful financially, making upwards of $1.36 billion. It's really like the crown jewel in the Illumination Pictures tiara of animation, and it's sort of made the career of Chris Meledandri, who was already riding high off the success of movies like Puss in Boots and Ice Age and Despicable Me, but now has really opened up to new adaptations of Shrek and more Mario, and there's also rumors of an upcoming Zelda movie as well. So there's a lot of development, but this movie is interesting to me for a very different reason, which is really kind of the twin reaction to it, which has been relatively positive from people who love video games, love Mario, are happy for this kind of movie to exist, and sort of an anxiety from the larger movie critic sphere about the sort of replacement of comic book movies by this new phase of game adaptations. So I guess the first question to lead with is, do you all feel anxious or happy that this movie exists?
I'll start and then pass the ball. I'm happy that it exists, and I think for better or worse, it's the best video game adaptation that I've seen, and I don't know what to do with that because I don't necessarily want more video game adaptations like this, but they did a good job with the material that they had.
We're trapped now. It made more than $1 billion on a $100 million budget. There's going to be like 50,000 of
We're
these
on
things.
the roller coaster now,
On the roller
and there's no
coaster.
getting off.
Yeah. Great.
I loved this movie, but I also grew up with Mario, and I have an unhealthy obsession with Nintendo in general. So it really didn't have to do much to work for me, and it does quite a bit, I would argue. But I choose to be a little bit more optimistic about this, even though I have a little bit of mistrust in the movie studio itself. I do trust Nintendo to handle their IPs with care, so I do ultimately think a lot of the content that will come out of this is hopefully going to be of good quality. But I do think that video game stories are worth sharing to audiences that maybe don't have the technical prowess to play these experiences. And even though, yes, Mario might be a little simpler, I'm thinking of what I think is the best movie, the best video game adaptation, which is The Last of Us.
Agreed.
Which I believe is a better show than it is a video game in a lot of ways, but that's another conversation. And
Save it for a different
That's a different podcast.
yeah, absolutely. But I think that ultimately, people would find it a very difficult game to play. It doesn't do a really good job of tutorializing its gameplay, and therefore, but it's a really good story. So I think it's honestly, even though, it's probably going to lead to some duds every now and then, I think ultimately giving people access to the magic that is the video game industry in different ways is ultimately a good thing.
Yeah.
I think I don't really have one strong feeling one way or the other on this. It's a bunch of mixed feelings. Like, I feel anxious about this more just in the sense that, Hollywood is going to find a different form of properties to use instead of coming up with, creative new stories to tell. So like,
absolutely
anxious for that part more than that it is specifically video games. I'm excited to see what you're talking about, Renee. Like, we've had so many video game movie duds over the years, like Prince of Persia. What are the other ones? The Assassin's Creed movie was.
Even the recent Uncharted was not that good.
I actually had fun with it. It wasn't good. I watched it on a plane. Whatever. Yeah. The point is, like, I'm excited. If we get more of these, what I'm excited to see them try to do more things. I mentioned this right after we finished the movie earlier, but like, this is the only movie that I can think of that's like a theatrical release video game adaptation that is an animated kids movie. Mm-hmm. And it's weird to me that when games are often so much like, I don't know if infantilized is the right word, but viewed as like something that kids do, that all the movies have tried to be like dark and serious or like, live action. And why haven't we gotten like a video game adaptation that's for kids? And I think that it worked really well for this movie because the realm of animation just helps you to like let go of like just to take it at more face value. And you don't need the story to make as much like logical progress. Like, you can abandon some of the connective tissue and just jump between scenes because like it's just a movie for like general audience kids. And so I'm excited by like, we don't need to get, like Oscar bait video game movies or blockbuster video game movies, but we can get like kids animated movies or, very like what other like types can exist. And that is what I'm excited for, but also anxious about generally, properties dominating an artistic medium.
Yeah. The thing that I took away is that like this putting Mario on that screen instead of the game screen made it actually feel like this is a weird property. Like, this world makes no sense anymore. It's two plumbers from Brooklyn running around giant mushrooms and then this other extra dimensional turtle guy, right? If you just abstract it all, and I was like, this is a creative new story. This is something new to actually see on my screen.
At least in film. I was also very curious about how they would know the word human, like, because they refer to when Peach meets Mario for the first time, she's like, "Oh my god, another human!" And
how does she know what that is?
How does she? Because she shows up in the Magic Kingdom as a baby.
Well, I think as soon as we start doing this, it's over.
Well, that's the thing, right?
There are a lot of questions. There's like an hour of picking nits in terms of like, how does the engineering work? Yeah. Who built the Rainbow Road? It's got brick. Is that what kind of cement are we using?
Yeah.
Like, just wait for the prequel. It'll explain it all. It's set up. The prequel and sequel are both set up in this movie.
Exactly.
They knew what they were cooking with.
Oh,
here.
totally. And like I guess like the main thing too is that like it really doesn't matter because it's referencing itself, right? Like a lot of people do have some sort of referential point of Mario in some capacity, whether or not it's like the classic NES, like side-scrolling 2D Mario that, our parents played, or if it's Mario 64, which is still heralded as like one of the best games of all time. Like, Mario is it's pretty large within our cultural consciousness, and so like you said, especially in animation, it like with this kind of referential point of previous and prior experience with it, but also with it being bright and colorful and beautifully animated, it kind of just allows you to just sit back and let the ride take you where it wants to go, even if that location doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. One of the interesting things for me is really this discussion of like, is it a kids movie or is it a video game adaptation? Because it came at a time last year where children's entertainment was like really fallow. Like kids movies had been either bombing or not being released in as high like a concentration for years. I think this was around the time when Pixar released Lightyear, which was not a successful movie.
No, it was a bomb.
And Pixar has been stagnating for a really long time. It's also like a couple of months after the success of Puss in Boots. Well, the sequel, but the new one that has
sequel,
The Last Wish, right?
Yeah, which is another Meledandri production, and he's got his hands all over this. So it's like, I think part of the issue with trying to grapple with what this movie means for games that are being adapted onto the screen and for animation is like it's actually like two different things jammed together. And to me, the indication of that, and something that everybody in the room seemed to react really well with, was the addition of like the Brooklyn part, and especially the character of Francis the dog, who is straight up out of Secret Life of Pets, which is another Illumination movie, right? These are, it's like that. 1/3. Well, I don't know if the character is exactly from that movie, but when you look at how the characters and the animals in that movie look, it's the same aesthetic, it's the same kind of humor. It's really like, what do the pets do when you're not looking at them, right? So it's got like this Trojan horse other like quarter of a movie at the start of it.
And it works.
Oh, it does. I don't know how they managed to make that dog like such a human in its animation, because its facial expressions, like even the nod of respect at the end of the movie felt like I was looking at a human face, but it was a dog. And I'm so taken about it, but it does work. And I think ultimately too, it's a very fine line with that stuff, because often it can feel kind of like tropish, or it can feel kind of like, you know, it's just a joke and it doesn't necessarily add a lot to it. And I think that's maybe where some of the infantilization sometimes comes with like the Minions movies. Like they're mostly cute and some of the humor can be a little bit redundant. And I think that they actually did a really good job of like taking what that dog could have fit into another Illumination movie. Like you said, it basically is ripped from The Life of Pets, but ultimately the way that they actually executed it in the movie somehow still works, and it feels almost feels like a little punk. Like he's a little bit more extreme than I would have imagined Nintendo being okay with. Like it's actually like a legitimately scary scene almost in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
So I'm curious, because we had an emotional response to the dog. We laughed a lot as like a group in this thing.
It's a very good scene.
At one point, we were watching this with a child, Alice, who in the scary scenes when Luigi's being chased, she was covering herself with her coat to kind of somewhat hide her eyes from what was happening on screen. And I'm curious in terms of like the emotional impact this has had. I don't remember ever reacting to a Mario game in this exact way. And I'm curious if we're thinking back to our experiences playing, I don't know, Odyssey, any of the original Marios, like what did this open up and what is it unable to accomplish?
I felt a little conflicted when Bowser Jr. calls Peach Mama at the end of Super Mario Sunshine, because I was like, I don't really understand how that anatomy would work out. So I think I felt some emotion during a Mario game.
So uncomfortable.
But also, I mean, Galaxy, I think, is a really good example of the way that emotion is employed in Mario games, because the storybook scene, which is totally optional, is like pretty heart-wrenching. And it's a story about a girl being ripped away from her family and not knowing where her home is. And even though when we see Rosalina as a character now, we don't think about it as much. But yeah, I think it's something that they've been capable of. It's just something that they might avoid.
I think for me, whenever I play a Mario game, I go in being like, I just want to have fun. Like I want to have a smile. I'm like almost positive that I'm going to have a smile on my face like the entire time I'm playing, in large part because I just know that Nintendo is going to try to be as creative as possible with that. So like I'm going to see something new and creative around the other corner. And I think I did get that from this movie because like of seeing how they, you know, make the Mushroom Kingdom work, how they make the Kong Kingdom work, seeing all the Mario Kart like references and stuff, just like seeing how they made that happen in such beautiful and colorful and vivid animation did give me like a bit of that feeling of wonder. I still think that like the games give it to me in like larger waves, but that's just because I've been playing the games for a long time. So that's that. What this movie did give me that I don't typically get from Mario games is like an emotional kind of like end to the storyline and like character arcs. And you know they're very simple. It's for a children's movie, but like Mario's a failure and he can't do anything right, and at the end of the movie like he becomes a hero. Luigi is always scared, and at the end of the movie he like steps in to save his brother, which for me, like I love my brother so much, and so like any story that is about like brothers coming together is like very impactful to me. And so that moment like made me feel a thing that I don't often feel in Mario games, because usually Mario and Luigi are just like they're good pals, and maybe they get separated, but they're not talking to each other. They're not expressing like their love for each other. So getting to actually see that on screen did make me feel a type of way that like I don't usually. This being said, I mostly play the mainline Mario games. Maybe that happens more in like Mario and Luigi, the like sticker stars and those things. Like, but yeah.
Did you
I
feel anything
weird?
Oh, you feel weird
because
is it because you have no brother?
Yes, I am not a brother of a brother, so I can't relate to any of that. To me, the main thing really is just that I grew up with Sega games. So I'm probably going to have this reaction when we do a watch of Sonic in a couple of months, but I feel I'm dead inside when I look at Mario.
Really?
I'm like, it's fine. And mostly what I feel when I think about the games is frustration.
Really?
Because I spent so much time raging at puzzles, and like, it's not like, it's a very intense experience. And then I watched the movie, and the movie has none of that for me. So I actually went in as a hater the first time, and I was like, this is just delightful. It's just fun.
Yeah.
I have like it's like head empty, no critical thoughts, just joy. And so I'm just like happy because it's colorful, it's light. It doesn't have to be like, there's no frustration. And to me, this is indicative of like the difference between the game experience and the film experience, which is like there is no like barrier to access in the movie. There's nothing that like prevents you from enjoying the movie at the pace that it's setting for you. You're just like along for the ride, which is uncomplicated. And maybe there's something lost there. And I suppose we'll see that when we turn to other games that are adapted as movies, if you like similarly lose an aspect of the play experience. I know I've talked to people, for example, for The Last of Us, who are like, well, the movie is, or the TV series is significantly like less frustrating because I don't have to run into the design aspect. And so there's like an interesting thing for me with this where people who are film people looking at this are like, how can we adapt the story, the characters, the world, the setting from Mario or from whatever property we're going to be talking about? And they really do view it as like IP, right? So this is the whole thing of like, it's a catalog of material to take in. And I think for game scholars or game players, the aspect is intimately tied more to the play aspect, where when I'm watching, the Mario Kart sequence, which is probably the closest I get to like childhood experiences with that. My cousin had a Super Nintendo, so she beat my ass at Mario Kart for like a decade.
You've experienced the pain of a blue shell.
Who hasn't?
Yes. Yeah. As a Toad player.
Ooh.
That has happened many times.
You may have
bro.
You may have deserved it.
Usually, if you get blue shelled, you do.
This is not a podcast about judging character choices. We do that externally.
I wonder, do you all, as people who have spent maybe more time than I have playing Mario games, do you feel like the gameplay mechanics are adapted in a way where you recognize them and you point to them and you're like, I've played that, or I've seen that, or I know what that feels like to like do that with a controller?
Every single frame and sound in this movie reminds me of the like dozens of Mario games that I've played, and I've played at this point an uncountable amount of them, and I could not even catalog them, but I have played a little bit of everything, and majority all the platformers essentially, but also a lot of the party games, the sports games, the karting games. Like, I've played everything, and I've played them for an ungodly amount of hours, and every single time I watch this movie, not only do I recognize something that I did not recognize the first time, but also it just immediately, like, my brain, my synapses fire so quickly when I watch this movie, because it pulls literally every string of nostalgia that I have in my head from every experience that I've had with Mario. And it does so in that colorful and bright and relaxing and not necessarily the most engaged way, which is cool, because I think video games are awesome and I love how active they are, but sometimes I just want to watch somebody talk about video games on a YouTube channel instead of play them myself, and this just gives me a different avenue to be able to like engage with these things passively. So
as soon as that Tanuki suit came out, I was like it does the thing. It is constant.
Yeah.
I don't really exactly know how I want to answer this question, because what was it like? How do I feel about like the gameplay being like turned into like
Yeah,
movie
how does it
form?
work? Mechanics
It
being
doesn't work,
adapted.
yeah.
I mean,
Does it work
well, so like the thing that like I'm gut thinking is that like I don't necessarily care if a video game adaptation into a movie like tries to do the mechanic, like we're gonna do the mechanical thing in the movie, because I think a lot of times when they try to do that, it like doesn't necessarily work out that well. In my brain, like I'm thinking about the Leap of Faith in the Assassin's Creed movie, which was pretty cool, but was like so short and did not have the feeling of like what that feeling is in the game. Doom like has that famous like sequence where they go into
FPS,
a first person kind of thing. So I think sometimes it can feel like very weird and jarring and like bad cinematic language. I think this was the best version of like that I could see. I think it's what you're talking about, Renee, where because like there's so much history in Mario that it's not one thing. Like there's the sequence where there's the 2D like one shot, which is really cool. But like the references to gameplay are just constant. Yeah. Like it's just it is the plot, it is the navigation, like the entire thing is that.
Yeah, and it's not even just the IPs that Mario is like the figurehead for, but it's also like there's so much Super Smash Brothers in this movie that goes unnoticed, especially in the 2D areas and in the fight with Donkey Kong. Mario is literally down being like the whole time, and that also then brings in this whole like community of people that like to I can't play Smash Brothers to save my life. I am so bad at it, but I love watching people who are really good at these competitive like Smash games, and to see the what is this like cultural phenomena of the Mario down B that like punches people down off the side of the cliff happen in the Mario movie is insane to me, because it feels like they're not only listening to our historical nostalgic experiences with it, but that they're also listening to what the community is making out of their interactions with it. So
they struck a really good balance with it that like I haven't seen in a game adaptation before. So like I was more positive on the mechanics that they brought into this than I tend to be with video game adaptations.
Yeah, and I think to clarify, the only reason I think this is the best adaptation compared to The Last of Us is because this actually like captures more of the player position and the audience position, where I think The Last of Us adaptation loses something because you aren't those characters. That is really critical to the ending of that game.
Totally. The ending of that game is personal.
I think the show did the best job with what they had, but something happens when you connect with the avatar in a different way for that ending. To not spoil anything. Whereas like Mario doesn't have that problem.
Well, and The Last of Us is also clearly not even necessarily trying to invite those elements of gamification into their show. They're actually trying to just make the show the best representation of the story. Whereas Mario, like, again, it's not necessarily the most storied video game, or series, I suppose. And so like, how do you translate Mario, the video game that's all about player experience? It's about fluidity of movement. It's about level design. How do you translate that to the screen other than just including as many references to game mechanics as you possibly can?
And that's what they did, and it worked.
To your points, like when you look at something like The Last of Us, or even the Uncharted movie, which we're going to be talking about in, I think, like 2 episodes or something, what's really being adapted is the characters. And that's more or less it. Like the rest is immaterial. When you look at the Mario movie, you've got Mario Kart, you've got Builder Toad, the Toad game.
The Captain Toad game.
Captain Toad.
Yeah, the Captain Toad.
Which is like the whole like level is like a giant cube that you like walk around. So seeing the town is like really fun because it like gives 3D definition. It's a lot more about like mechanics and setting and world, to your point. I guess the final question to lead out would be, obviously this movie has made like 10 times its budget. It's like ridiculous. And
good for them.
They're making Mario 2. That's already confirmed.
Yeah.
So my question is, if you had any other Nintendo IP to see Meledandri adapt, what would it be?
Okay, can I jump in really quick? Because I thought you were going to ask, what should they do next?
I was also
That's also fine.
Okay, because that's how I'm going to interpret this question. And what it has to be is a level by level, shot for shot adaptation of the second Mario for NES.
No.
The one that was not supposed to be a Mario game. No. That's what I want to see.
Birdo.
I want,
yeah.
I want my
I want-
Birdo. I want my Mouser. I want everything.
I want
that
Birdo eating and shooting eggs.
Birdo. I want like Peach in this movie was Slay. Birdo is Slayer, and that's what I want. And I want Rain and Blood playing because if they're going for that non-Mario music, you just got to go hard.
You think they can get that into a general rated
I want
movie?
Birdo on screen while Slayer plays Rain and Blood.
That would be hilarious.
Okay.
Daisy and Rosaline.
And
would
I
be
didn't
sick,
know I
too.
wanted this until I was saying it right now.
It's honestly, it sounds like it's really well thought out.
Commendable.
Eggs. I will now cede my final comment.
Okay. I think that, to answer your first question, I would love to see them do a short film about Pikmin. Because they used to do a lot of short films for Pikmin, at least Nintendo
That's a
did.
good pick.
Yep. And I think that animation style would look so good on those little Pikmin. And I am obsessed with Pikmin. But I would also like to answer, I think actually, and I think this is a pretty good theory, I think you could probably put money down on this. I think that what the second movie is going to be a loose adaptation of Super Mario Galaxy 2, because that one has Yoshi in it, and they also mentioned that there's like a bunch of other galaxies and there's the Luma and stuff, right? So I think that they're going to introduce Rosalina, and I also think they're going to be in space. I hope that for some reason they decide to bring back the observatory from the first movie, and that ultimately it'll be Bowser. Because also, how do you one-up the Bowser plot, right? Like, how do you make it grander to even warrant having a second movie? You put it in space. Marvel did it, and now Mario's going to show
Blue
it.
beam shooting into the sky.
Jack Black is just cooking
Absolutely.
in this movie.
You want galactic Bowser, and the story in those two games, there's like some of the best story to possibly adapt. So now you've set the scene. Now you can go back to space. Now you can bring Yoshi into the picture. You can have Rosalina. I honestly think that's where if they don't go that way, it's where they should go. So
I think I caught the same things you were going with. I was surprised at the tag at the end of the movie. No spoiler. I was surprised that the tag at the end of the movie wasn't relating to Rosalina and the Luma.
Absolutely.
Is what I guess I'll say. I had to look up Nintendo properties because when you said Pikmin, that just seemed like the perfect one. So I'll echo that, but also just shout out Kirby. Because Kirby's great, and I feel like that tone could fit with this animation style. Because the one that I would be most curious about seeing is Zelda, but that's already happening, and I think that's happening with a diff.
Is that happening as an animated movie? I think they're trying to do live action.
But they have a direct the director who directed Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the most recent Apes movie, is directing it, and he did a pretty good job. I think that he might. He has
Those
a good
are two very
footing
different
for
IPs, but yeah, I could see it. I
well,
guess.
Kingdom was very much like an adventure movie. It kind of fits for.
But
for
give them
Zelda
the Birdo
style.
standalone.
Yeah,
And I think you're cooking.
Birdo starting a metal band.
Yeah.
but
I guess
Kirby Illumination style,
I think-
eating up food,
yeah.
hanging out with Meta
King
Knight. That would be
DDD,
cool.
yeah, that would be-
You do Kirby in the Forbidden World, he lands in post-apocalyptic world and just
Oh, that's
goes around
perfect.
ruined New York or something.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think it has to happen. I think we should be on Illumination's payroll.
Yeah, yeah. Immediately greenlight Kirby and Pikmin.
Yeah.
It would probably make a ton
print
of money.
money.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's raining yolk from the lacerated egg. Pay me any amount. You'll have it.
I just want Donkey Kong.
Oh,
Country.
Donkey Kong would be good. They are,
Donkey Kong standalone.
yeah, and they're also adding the
would be
theme
cool.
park, the expansion to the Super
Oh, hell
Nintendo
yeah.
world
Let's
is
go.
Donkey Kong. So maybe that
I mean,
is
listen,
actually a good
Diddy Kong's
candidate.
already in the movie. Trixie's
I love
there.
that, yeah.
I just want Funky Kong.
Oh yeah, Funky Kong. And the
That's
DK rap being in the movie is one of the most iconic references
Just
ever.
give me Paul Rudd playing Funky Kong, and it's a riff on him in Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Oh my god.
That's a great.
That's
a
all
great
I
pitch.
want.
There's so much that I want, and I fear that I it'll be too long until we get it, but I want all of that.
These are going pretty fast as far as adaptations go.
That's true.
Especially compared to game development time.
I mean, they need to get that NES extended universe going. So, I mean, here we are.
Do they sell you an
Yeah, I
expansion
want Dig
pack
Dig.
for the N64?
It's called the sequel.
It'll be interesting to see how they do the Smash Bros. Movie. Because that's going to be the
Oh, there's-
Avengers crossover.
3D, it's coming back. They're all going to
There's-
fly out at you.
There's no way that would happen. There's no way they would be able to get the properties for that, unfortunately, but it would be very fun.
Hey,
We can always hope.
we've
Yeah.
devolved. Do you have a lead out on this podcast?
My lead out is I'm happy that everyone seems to just love this movie in a kind of generally uncomplicated way. And whether that's kids or young adults or people who have kids now and grew up with the franchise, it's nice to see something that people can just enjoy, especially because pop culture has been up and down in these last couple of years. And this is just like it's a nice refresher.
This was nice. It was a great break.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so
And
much.
Thanks, guys.
See you next time.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Connecting to Game podcast. This podcast is produced in conjunction with the Technoculture Art and Games Research Center at Concordia University in Montreal, Canada. If you would like to suggest future films for our TAG Critical Watch parties or have ideas for topics you'd like to see discussed on the podcast, please reach out at tag.coordinator@concordia.ca.